All right. So this demo is to get you started in sharing a reproducible R workflow using myBinder. So I'm going to start where hopefully most of you are most comfortable in RStudio. So this is a minimal example. So what I've got here are three files. I've got my R project file. I've got a R Markdown file, and I've got an RENV lock file. So I should probably go through how I got here. If you're not used to setting up R projects, R projects are really useful for organizing your R workflows. And importantly here, they're important for using RENV. So I'm going to start actually with a brand new project so I can show you from the beginning. So let's start from a brand new directory, and we're going to do a new project. And I'm going to name mine Devil's Hole 3. So I just stole this R Markdown from an R package. It's a vignette that belongs in an R package, but it's just for demonstration purposes here. So starting a new project, this is going to create a new directory under R projects for me. Create it wherever you store your R projects. Do I want to create a Git repository? So my RStudio is connected to Git and GitHub. So I have this option to link it up. I'm gonna not do that for now, so I can show you how to do it in GitHub Desktop. Use RENV for this project is also given as an option. I'm going to start that up manually, just in case you're not used to using RENV. I'll show you how to do that manually. So RStudio is switching over to my new project, and you see now the only file in here is this R project file. Which this R project file just gives my settings for my project. Okay, so first thing, I'm going to copy these files into my new space because, sorry, just copy this one R Markdown file to new space. Because that's the only file I need for showing you how to set this up. All right. So I've got my R Markdown file. My R Markdown file goes through this this vignette from this package isogeochem. And you see here up at the top, I'm getting a warning that the package isogeochem is required but is not installed. Okay, so first things first, you need to set up RENV. RENV is going to help you manage all of your dependencies for this workflow. So if you haven't already, you'll need to install packages RENV. I have already installed RENV, so I don't need to do that. And then I'm going to call RENV init. So this initializes the use of RENV for this specific project. So it's saying that it's going to add some new files. I'm going to tell it, go ahead, do what you want. So now we have this new folder, RENV. And it tells me here that it's linking packages into a library. So something RENV does is it keeps locally copies of all the packages that you're using in your project. So normally with R, you'll have all of your packages stored under a specific R version. I believe I'm using R version 4.4 right now. So on my system, I've got under this folder for R version 4.4, all packages that I use in R. Um, what RENV does is it stores those packages locally within your project directory. Um, so you never get any confusion about where you're pulling packages from. Your packages are stored within your project. Um, we also see now an renv.lock file, and I've got my R version 4.4.1 and all of my packages. So this is all the packages I have used in this R Markdown document. It just, RENV just went in and read my R Markdown document, saw all the packages that were used, all of their dependencies, and it put them all in here in this renv.log file for me. Um, any questions so far? Does that does that make sense? So managing an environment, managing dependencies is much more important in Python and not used as often in R. But any questions? Is this making sense?
I have a quick question. Can this process be repeated, say, if you have to, and if you're trying to, it tries to install a package that you need like an underlying uh operating system package or library in, if it fails?
Um, sorry,
If
can you ask that again? I didn't quite. Yeah.
say if you needed so if you're saying installing it through Ubuntu and you need like libssl that you don't have, can
Uh,
you like restart it if it fails and it'll
mm,
just fix itself? This RN process.
yeah. So the RENV init process, you can redo it by doing RENV snapshot. And snapshot updates your lock file. So if you've gone through and you made some changes to your R Markdown, um, snapshot will update it whenever you ask it to. Um, this process works automatically, kind of when you stop and save things, but you can call it at any time to make sure it's updated, before you push it to GitHub, for instance.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Um, so at this point, we have everything we need here in this directory to use myBinder. So I'm going to go and connect this to GitHub. So I'm going to open GitHub Desktop. I need to create a new repository from an existing folder on my drive, and that would be this option here. And that looks right, Devil's Hole 3. Oh, okay. So create a repository here. So I have to enable Git, which I could have done when I set up that project, um, but I'll do it here. So the path is already in there. There's already a git ignore file in there, so I don't need to create a new one. I can add a description here if I'd like to. So let's just call this demo for error. Um, This repository is currently only available on your local machine. By publishing it to GitHub, you can share it and collaborate with others. Why, yes, I would like to do that. So I'm going to keep the name the same. I'm going to move it to github.com. Keep the description. I do not need to keep this code private because I want you all to be able to see it. And it's publishing it to GitHub. All right. So now we are linked up with a live GitHub repository. So let's try to take a look. And here it is. So it's live up on GitHub now. Um, I've got an R project. I've got this RENV folder. I've got the necessary information for GitHub. The most important files here are my R Markdown and my RENV lock. And actually, as far as GitHub is concerned, those are the only two files that I need. So now we're going to step over to myBinder. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, let's step over to myBinder because I think it's good to just bring this in at this point. So here's mybinder.org. This page here will allow you to test the ability of myBinder to pull your repository up into the cloud. So as I was describing this morning in our lecture, under the hood, what's happening is some software called repo to Docker is used. And repo to Docker will take the information in your repository and try to build your environment based on the files that exist. So one file that it is able to use is the renv.lock file. And it should be able, based on the renv.lock file and a file that describes your runtime, what version of R you're using, to interact with your R Markdown file. That's normally the case, and that's been the case in the past with myBinder. But recently, there's been some trouble with that method of initialization for our projects. So I've been using a workaround where we start with a container from Rocker. So the Rocker project, this is a nonprofit, a group who works on putting R into containers for use by developers and people like you and me. So here is a template that we can use. We can test it out here by clicking Launch Binder, and Binder will try to spin it up. So right now, that repo to Docker software I mentioned is being used on that repository from Rocker. And we'll see if it launches our studio instance for us. Cool. So here's what you can end up with for your own project. This is pretty basic. All that we're getting is ggplot. This apt.txt gives specific requirements to Linux. And this Docker file is where most of the work is happening. So this original image from Rocker for Binder gives us R version 4.2 and sets up a notebook for us. And it updates our Linux dependencies and finally installs what we want for R. So we can use this ourselves. So I'm going to steal some things from here. We will steal this as a template. And I will share with you when we're done a couple of working templates that you can use yourself for our projects. And I'm creating more repositories than I need here for our demonstration, but I'm showing you a couple different ways to how to go about this. Maybe I shouldn't confuse myself. There you go. Okay. So what's cool about this is that we were able to use a template, just copy all of their files over, and we can insert our own workflow. So our own, our own file that we'd like to share. Um, so I'd like to, and I'm just going to work from GitHub directly here. I'd like to just add that R Markdown file. Okay, so now if I were to go and launch myBinder, the only change will be that my R Markdown file should appear within RStudio as one of the available files to look at. But what I haven't done yet is update the dependencies needed. So if I go back and update that, so all I've added here is isogeochem. I've put in my markdown file. And let's see if we can launch myBinder now. Oh, oops, I forgot one more thing. And that's good to notice. So looking up here at the top, the address, I noticed it was still pulling from the original repository. That rocker/org is a bit of a giveaway because I forgot to update our link here. So you need to use your own username and repository here. One of the dangers of copying code wholesale using a template like this is forgetting to change some things. Okay, let's try that again. So you can show the code what myBinder is trying to do here to build up your image. And you notice the template went much quicker. That's because it's been used recently. Somebody else had tried to open it somewhat recently, so it was already cached where myBinder could access it. Since I've made changes, it's going to have to build from scratch. And now you get a sense for this process can take a while. So this is one of the big drawbacks of using myBinder. So it makes your project much more accessible, but it can take quite some time to build. So I'm going to leave this for now, but this can take 10 minutes or more to build certain images. Okay. So this repository is one that I have shared with you before. This is a template I created for this workshop. And the template does a number of things for you. So the rocker template I just shared, you notice had an install.r file, had this install.r file, and that's how the dependencies were managed. And this new template I created, the dependencies are managed with RENV. So first, with RENV, you can pin specific package versions, which can be important. Um, Second, RENV allows you to pin the R version as well. So all of your package versions as well as your R version will be pinned in RENV and used in the Docker file. So this RENV restore command is going to make use of that. A couple of other things that are in this template for you are a couple of workflows. So one of them is this Docker image workflow. So what this does is it builds a Docker image from that Docker file script. The Docker file script pulls in your RENV lock to bring up your environment. And also importantly, you cache that image. So you see down here, Docker username and password. So that image is stored on your own Docker Hub. And you'll see here in the binder folder, this new Docker file calls that cached image. So what you save is all of this time. You see this is still building. It takes quite a while to build an image from scratch. So instead, we can just pull down an image that's already been cached. One more thing, one more action that's given to you in this template is to automate the building, the knitting of an R Markdown file. So I think this is a cool way to show your reproducibility in a GitHub repository. All this does, well, all it does, but it sets up R for you. It initializes RENV to bring in your environment. It knits your R Markdown as a Markdown file. And then what you end up with is rendered Markdown that GitHub knows how to show. So this file here is automated. The knitting of it is automated through a GitHub action to produce this. So this template, I think, is pretty useful for a lot of R projects. This is all R specific. So if you're using any other code languages, Python, for example, that need to run as well, you'd have to handle those dependencies and that setup separately. But if you're sharing, especially an R Markdown file, or even if you're just you're sharing some R scripts, this is a pretty useful template to start with. So I will show how this template launches on Binder. And we should see this go much more quickly. Notice the very first call here is from our existing image. So all it has to do is download what Docker calls pull that image. These images are still fairly large. So this is a few gigabytes. So it's worth noting that it's still not immediate, but it's not 10 minutes either. I'll leave that aside for just a minute. I'll introduce these other badges at the top that you may have not seen yet. So we've seen this launch binder badge, and we've seen the Zenodo DOI badge. These two badges are a little more unique. So the containerized badge is related to the GitHub action that I described before that builds your container and caches it. So this passing here indicates that GitHub action is working correctly. This reproducible badge um, is a unique badge that I created for this template um, that shows that the knitting of your R markdown was successful in the GitHub action. So we were able to automate that. That makes your code reproducible. Check back in with Binder. It looks like we're just about done. So I'll take a minute to say that all the resources that I've been going through, um, mybinder.org, Rocker, these templates, these are all shared in the R Leapfrogs platform. If you have trouble finding something specific that you'd like to use or your setup is a little different, please feel free to reach out. Also, all afternoon today is your personal time to work on these things and get them up and running. So you're able to share tomorrow. So please feel free to reach out this afternoon, and I'm happy to help you get yours set up if you're running into trouble. Okay, so here's RStudio now. RStudio has launched with my example. So this is just a little tidyverse example, but I should be able to knit that document. Oh, it's already running down here. And my dependencies are all available, so it's able to knit the document successfully. Small example, but it runs interactively in the cloud. And you can do this with certainly much bigger examples than this. You can also use Jupyter notebooks, and you can use different badge URLs. So back here, when we were setting up your badge for Binder, so I'm filling in the URL of my repository. I can give it a specific file. So if I have a Jupyter notebook that I'd like to run with my R environment, I can put that information in here, and then my badge that I copy into my README will reflect that. Yeah, I'm going to stop at this point and see if there are any questions on what I've gone through here. Okay. Well, if there's no new questions, um, I am going to leave you to work on your own projects. Um, remember that all of this is available in the R Leapfrogs platform. You should find links to all these resources there. And if there's anything you're having trouble finding or having trouble with the idiosyncrasies of your own setup, again, please feel free to reach out via Slack. I'm going to stop sharing here and stop.